We begin tonight with serious news, breaking news out of the Middle East. We can now report that the hostile regime of Iran is now the likely culprit of that drone attack against major Saudi oil facilities. All told, the attack caused 5% of the world's crude production to be interrupted indefinitely. Wall Street Journal rightly reporting that American intelligence believed the attacks were staged inside of Iran. And meanwhile, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia confirmed that the weapons used in that attack, including multiple drones and missiles, they were Iranian devices, and of course that they farmed out in their proxy war by the rebels in Yemen against Saudi Arabia. The reason for Iran's aggression, it's pretty simple. It's not hard, not complicated to figure out. The mullahs, you know, the ones that chant death to America, death to Israel, the ones that want to wipe Israel and the U.S. off the map and the face of the planet Earth. Those same mullahs want oil prices to shoot through the roof so that weak world leaders will end their cooperation with the U.S.-backed sanctions that are crippling, as we speak, the Iranian economy. They are now suffering from a devastating multi-year recession as a result of the president's policies and the president not trying to bribe the mullahs in Iran with $150 billion in cash and other currencies. Inflation in Iran can now reach a staggering 40%. Its currencies, well, now near record lows. And meanwhile, because of America's newfound energy independence, that's right, we, the American people, U.S. citizens, we are now shielded more than ever from the chaos in the Middle East. In other words, make no mistake, oil, gas is the lifeblood of every single economy on the face of this earth. Geopolitically, this is less important than ever to us, but America's massive crude oil production, refinery capabilities provide this country now with economic security and leverage against hostile regimes abroad, including Iran and other countries that frankly hate our guts. Under President Trump, this is the first time in 75 years, thanks to his policies, that America is energy independent. We are, the United States of America, for the first time in all those years, the single largest producer of energy worldwide. Another record, another campaign promise by the president kept. But if the radical socialist Democrats, if they get their way and enact their new Green Deal, you can pretty much kiss this prosperity and all of our security goodbye, because they have these insane fantasies about ending all oil and gas production in the U.S. in 10 years. And that means no combustion engine and everything is free. In other words, they would hand over our independence, the lifeblood of our economy, to every dictator, despot in the world, yes, including the mullahs of Iran, but even the hostile regime of Vladimir Putin and the hostile actor that he is. You want to bring the hostile regime of Russia, Putin, to its knees, then America needs to produce more oil, more gas, and get it at cheaper prices to our Western European allies. Then Russia's economy, I promise you, it will implode. The standard of living of every single American will rise dramatically. Wealth creation on a level we've never seen before in this country. We have the world's greatest, richest natural resources. But is that what Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and sleepy, creepy, crazy Joe 30333 want? No. Because if one thing is certain tonight, it is clear. This hostile Iranian regime must be held in check. Yet another tanker today was seized in the Straits of Hormuz. Interestingly, the strait has never been less, well, geopolitically, strategically important to us now that we're energy independent and a net exporter of energy. But the reason it's important to us and every other country is the free flow of oil at market prices. That must continue. The rest of the world is not as fortunate as we are. The world's leading sponsor of state terrorism, well, they must never be able to acquire or develop a nuclear weapon. Make no mistakes. They say it, believe them. They want to wipe Israel off the map. Believe them when they say, yeah, they want to wipe the United States off the face of the earth. They want to kill Israelis. They want to kill Americans. It's a simple math equation. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You have a convert or die caliphate. That means convert to their radical version of Islam. You marry that, you couple that with nuclear weapons, that could mean a potential modern-day nuclear holocaust, the likes of which we've never seen. If you doubt that, look at the last century alone. Let's see, fascism, communism, Nazism, Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, Japan, Tojo. Over 100 million human beings slaughtered in the last century So believe it can happen again and act as though it will happen again if we don't act now. You cannot appease evil. You cannot bribe evil regimes with these aggressive ideologies. So instead of giving in to Iran's acts of aggression, it is time to show the radical mullahs in the world that the U.S. has a very rigid backbone. The president stated very clearly he is locked and he is loaded this weekend. And as we await President Trump's remarks tonight, let's turn our attention to yet another important topic, and that would be that business model inside the media mob consisting of spreading lies, conspiracy theories, slander, libel, defamation. That's all, par for the course, especially anybody and everybody connected to President Trump. Now, over the weekend, the New York Times, the so-called paper of record, got it wrong yet again and published yet another lie, misleading article, uncorroborated, to smear, Brett Kavanaugh. In a recent article, two so-called journalists reported an account from a third party claiming he witnessed Kavanaugh commit a sexual assault in college. What the New York Times conveniently left out of their article is that the alleged victim has no recollection at all of this incident and refused to be interviewed by the New York Times. They should have put that in. That might have been important. And meanwhile, the third-party so-called witness, that would be a prominent lawyer who once worked for the Clintons. And by the way, ironically, during the Monica Lewinsky time. In other words, it's complete BS, just more of the same, more conspiracy theories, lies, more besmirchment, character assassination, more slander, more libel, more defamation. And the New York Times later had to issue a correction, but it doesn't matter. The damage is done. And it appears the New York Times intentionally and willfully misled its readers. And today, the president called for the resignation of everyone involved in this story. You can see the tweet up on the screen. This is not an isolated incident. These days, the so-called paper of record is nothing more than a mean-spirited, sloppy, anti-Trump propaganda arm and nothing more than an extension of all things state Democratic Party, just like the rest of the media mob. Last week, for example, on September 11th, the Times was forced to retract a tweet. They were downplaying the role of terrorists on 9/11/01. Now, the day before, they were forced to take down another tweet praising communist dictator Mao. Yes, the great revolutionary figure, as they called him. In other words, the mass murderer. The Times was also forced to apologize, if you recall, for publishing their blatantly anti-Semitic tweet depicting the Prime Minister of Israel, our closest ally in the Middle East, Benjamin Netanyahu, as Trump's seeing eye dog. And in a separate incident, an editor at the paper was forced to apologize for his past virulent anti-Semitic tweets. Now, then there is the anti-Trump communist, Brett Stevens. He had a very public mental breakdown after a George Washington University professor called, Mr. Stevens a bedbug on Twitter. He couldn't handle it. So bedbug Brett threatened the professor and reported him to his employer. Well, Mr. Bedbug, I have no problem. You used to work in the same building as me. You feel free to report me to my bosses because I don't really care. Now your new name is Bedbug Brett Stevens, forever. Meanwhile, in June, a prominent New York Times reporter falsely claiming that Congressman Dan Crenshaw, remember this, that he didn't support the 9/11 Victims Fund. But the problem is Dan Crenshaw was a co-sponsor of the bill. And let's not forget about the most blatant hack job by the New York Times. Remember, according to leaked audio from its executive editor, the Times actually dedicated and bragging about their entire newsroom focused on one story, perpetrating the Russian conspiracy theory hoax against the president. In other words, they lied, they advanced the daily biggest hoax conspiracy theories ever. But because that widespread effort was a total dud, I said, it became a little problematic. So we're going to now shift the narrative. We're not going to admit we were wrong. We're not going to make a correction. And we're just going to find more ways to go after Trump. We'll go after him on racism. Unfortunately, this kind of anti-Trump rage is replicated and echoed across nearly every mainstream single media outlet in this country. They are blinded by this psychotic hate and rage, and that's why the media mob is constantly churning out fake stories, one after another. Just look at your screen. Over the past 2+ years, we have witnessed one phony, fake, lying story after another. For example, remember when NPR lied about Don Jr.'s Senate testimony, or the fake reporting about Michael Cohen's fantasy trip to Prague when he'd never been to Prague. Then there's The Guardian's fake bombshell about Manafort. And don't forget when 3 CNN staffers, they were fired over a false report about Anthony Scaramucci, the mooch, or the fake New York Times report about Nikki Haley and expensive curtains, $57,000. Fake news. For 3+ years, the fake reports have not stopped. They don't apologize. They don't retract. They don't correct. They don't change their ways. Now, the stories target everyone associated with Trump, starting with his wife and his kids, even his youngest son, and Jared Kushner, his brother-in-law, now to Brett Kavanaugh, to the First Lady of the United States of America, even the Covington High School kid that was wearing a MAGA hat that did absolutely nothing wrong, Nicholas Sandmann. Yeah, well, thanks to the media, Nicholas Sandmann has one of the best libel attorneys in the entire country by the name of Lynn Wood. My prediction, he will be, well, if not a billionaire, pretty darn close. Now, tonight, there's not enough time to list every single fake story from the media mob. In fact, there isn't enough time to list every breathless, untrue conspiracy theory. Let's go to fake news, conspiracy TV, and that would be NBC. Roswell Rachel Maddow, she's the leader-in-chief, learning absolutely nothing from her 2.5+ years of lying and pushing her conspiracy theories. Well, she never apologized. She never corrected the record. Nope, she just doubles down on stupid every other day. And she pushed yet another hoax last week, this time about the U.S. military refueling planes at an airport near Trump's Turnberry Resort. Why? To bolster business for the president. Well, in reality, Roswell Rachel, the U.S. Air Force, they have used that particular airport as a refueling stop hundreds and hundreds of times before Trump ever became president. Maybe just a little fact-checking might help your show out. But Roswell Rachel, she's now the face of NBC News. She sits there on election nights, on debate nights, with Tom Brokaw and Lying Brian. She leads their coverage. Wow.